Welcome to Cash Chats with me, Andy Webb from BeCleverWithYourCash.com. This is a podcast to help you make the most from your money. Episode 232 is another Your Money This Week, looking back at the top personal finance stories from the last 7 days. So we've got 6 good stories for you today, lots of really interesting things it's worth you getting across. And to join me for this one, it is Dawn Hills. She is a personal finance and money content creator on Instagram and YouTube, focusing on things like property and career. And you might have seen it also on programs like Steph's Packed Lunch, giving some insight into money matters. So it's lovely to have her join me. Some of the stories we talk about today: buyer remorse over pandemic purchases, those things we sort of maybe spent money on while shut up at home, we might now regret. The current account savings trap, that's an interesting one. And also why we might have shortages at Uber. That plus much, much more. So stick around for that one. I will also return after my chat with Dawn with my deals of the week. And there are some great ones there. So make sure you do stick around for that. And lastly, don't forget, if you haven't already, I would absolutely love it if you could leave me a review and a rating on the podcasting app you're listening to this on right now. Hopefully it will only take you a few seconds, but just 5 stars would be amazing, whatever you think it deserves. But it really does help other people find the podcast, get the message out, and really grow the channel. Right, let's get into it. This is episode 232 of Cash Chats. Dawn, it is lovely to have you on the podcast, helping me have a look at some of the big stories from the last 7 days. Let's jump straight into it, shall we? And the first one I want to talk about relates to our spending during the pandemic and maybe some of the regrets that have come through. What did this survey find?
So this was a report by Aviva Insurers. So they were saying that 1 in 10 people have regret with regards to what they've spent during lockdown. Now, as we know, COVID brought the whole thing where we couldn't go out, couldn't do anything. So we were buying items that perhaps we wouldn't buy normally. So pizza ovens, I'm sure Andy, you bought some things as well. I bought a fire pit, for instance, hot tubs. But the regret was that the money that was being spent was around £1,400 per item, which, you know, you wouldn't spend normally, would you?
No, it's a huge amount, isn't it? And you're right. I thought really, when you look at the list of all the different things that people are buying that they're regretting, apparently 1 in 20 people bought a pizza oven, like you said. 1 in 20 people bought a hot tub. You're having a great time. Pizza there, hot tub here. It's all coming together, which sounds lovely.
Exactly.
But then they're regretting it. And it's,
they are.
It's
they are because we're not using these things now. I think as lockdown eased, we're going out more. So these items are sat in our houses or in the garden. So what they found is that around 4,000 people have sold or given away those items that they bought in that time. So it's crazy, isn't it? It really is.
It is. I mean, it's kind of what I think that the things that people who regret the purchase overall, like 9% don't use them anymore. 11% hardly use them. And 8% didn't even use them at all. They just bought them and they sat there. And obviously that might not be something as massive as a hot tub. That might be some clothing, or it could be, I don't know, a computer game or something for those like not used at all things. But it's really easy to you see how we kind of got caught up in that time. A bit of excess cash sitting around, can't spend it on holidays or going out.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, liking the idea of outdoor dining and outdoor hot tubs, but you know, the British summer this year didn't really lend itself.
It really didn't. So Aviva said 188. There was a year-on-year increase on accidental damage claims for hot tubs in 2020. So what they were finding is that parasols were punching the sides. You know, hot tubs being blown away and damaged. So again, it just shows that this money, was it wasted? I don't know. You know, it kept us busy during those times, but you can see what has happened as a result of the spending.
Were there any things that you kind of remember that you sort of spent money on now and you're like, do you know what? That was a bad purchase. I wish I hadn't done it.
Not a bad purchase. I wanted a fire pit, but the thing is, I didn't use it. So it sat outside.
Was that because of the weather? Was that because you couldn't use it?
Yeah, it was because of the weather. Yeah. So each time I wanted to go out, it wasn't as hot, even though it's supposed to heat you up. Still, you don't want to be outside. So it's about £100 that went down the drain. But I don't know, maybe next year.
Maybe. I mean, this is also a kind of good opportunity for people to think about selling stuff as well, isn't it? You know, that kind of, rather than have it sitting around, you might find someone who wants to give you some cash for it. I mean, if it's brand
Yeah.
new, never used, then hope your price is up. But even stuff that's damaged, you know, we had, when we got our kitchen redone and they took the sink out, and I thought, well, it looked like a perfectly decent sink, but it didn't really fit with what we'd done. So I put it on Facebook Marketplace, and I think someone came and took it like 70 quid for it or something like that. And it was just like an old sink. And I'm like, you can't complain about that, really, can you? So it's definitely worth having a look at these things, big or small, new or old, seeing if you can sell them on if you don't use them. I think the classic kind of thing, which I think we bought in lockdown, which hasn't really been used. And I knew when we bought it that this was going to be the case, because every time I've had one of these before, the same thing has happened. If I tell you it is a kitchen gadget, can you guess what it is?
Oh no. Oh,
It's a classic
I know
one.
everybody was like baking. It was something to do with baking.
Kind of. It's one you'll remember it from your childhood. It's not new. This is not a fad. It's a
Oh, like an
toasted sandwich
electric.
maker.
Oh
The
yes,
toasty maker.
toasty maker.
And they've always been that thing. You get it, you get really excited about it, and you do your cheese one, you do your baked bean one, maybe you. We didn't do this, but some people do dessert ones. You get all excited, and it goes back in the cupboard, and then it just stays there, and you forget it's there. I mean, okay, it was only sort of 20, 25 quid, so it's not on this whole scale of these pizza ovens and hot tubs, but yeah, there's always these things that come along.
100%. And I think it's quite, if you look at things that were on demand as well during the summer. So, for instance, patio heaters. You couldn't get patio heaters for love nor money. So, again, people were stuck indoors. You want to sit outside, you want to keep hot, nice and warm. So, if you've got something like that, that you know next summer is going to be on demand and you're not using it, that'd be a really good tip to try and sell that, because they were going for
Yeah.
hundreds, but you couldn't get them for love nor money.
Yeah, that's
So
true. It's every time
again,
there's a heat wave, isn't it? The fans disappear. You
definitely.
can't get the fans. You need to time when you buy it and so on.
Right.
There's
Yeah,
probably a whole little
right.
resale business going on as well. Get it now, it's out of season. Buy all your fans now, have them ready for just in case we have a hot
Next
summer
week.
in
Yeah,
2022.
literally.
Right, the next story we talk about is a kind of another kind of mistake that some people might be making. This is some research from Hargreaves Lansdown on where we keep our savings.
Yes, that's right. So 1 in 5 people, they keep their savings in their current accounts, and they are missing out on potential interest rates in other savings accounts. Now, and I can understand why some people do this, because people may think I've got easy access to the savings that are in my current account. I don't need to dip into something else. There isn't great interest rates around in the savings account world. So what's the point? So that's what people are doing. So 44% of people, they've kept their money in the current accounts because they feel like they've got that easy access. And 44% thinks that it's not worth putting their money into savings accounts because the interest rates are low. Interestingly enough, more men than women do this. So 24% of men, over 90% of women. And when asked, people said that 15% of people said that they haven't got round to moving the money. So they had the intention of doing so. And 16% have left it there because they actually feel like they get a good interest rate within their current account. So they're not moving it out.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? So you've got, I mean, generally, this is one of the things that I say all the time. It's kind of like, get the best interest rate you possibly can. And often one of the worst places is your current account. Conversely, that last stat you gave us can also, if you've got the right current account, be one of the best places for some of your savings. So for these 1 in 5 people who keep their savings in their current account, there is a small number of those guys who are possibly doing it deliberately because they know they're getting it at a better rate. But everyone else, it doesn't matter what you say. If you think, well, what's the point? Rates are rubbish elsewhere. Yes, they're rubbish, but they're not as rubbish. 0.67%, which is the best easy access account right now, is still a lot better than 0%.
Exactly.
And that means you're losing that. You are still losing money compared to inflation right now, but you're losing less. And you really can add up, particularly if you've got sizable sums of money.
And I think the danger is as well, is that you've got that tendency to dip into the savings. So if you've got that in your current account and you're not really watching it, and it's kind of like, I'll just spend. And then by the end of the month, if you're doing sort of budgets, you're realizing, well, hold on a second, that pot that was in within my account, my current account has gone. You
Yeah, this
know,
is that kind of, it's so easy to do that, isn't it? That kind of spending
of
creep that if you
course,
don't kind of partition it out. Now, like at that most simple level, lots of the new accounts like Monzo and Starling, and even some of the high street banks are adding this feature as well. They do have these separate, they call them pots or spaces that you can move
that's
money
right.
into. So you do kind of have that clean break, so you can't spend it accidentally. But you still have that same problem that if you are putting it in your same, a little section part of your current account, you're not earning interest still. So although they're lovely and they are convenient and maybe they're a good starting place for it to move your money to, I would still kind of every now and again take a look at that and then move it into a different account that's earning at the best possible rate you can. And it's easy to do this. It's not complicated to have these extra savings accounts or even additional current accounts if they're ones that are offering you the interest or for whatever reason it might be. Definitely sort of pays to do this. And okay, it might feel like small amounts because the rates are low, but if you do it, you get into the habit of doing it. I think you are gonna win. So it's interesting that. So, well, I don't know actually. Did you think that was a lot of people? 1 in 5. Did you think? I actually thought it might be more people who had their
I
savings.
actually thought there'd be more. There'd be more. So it's quite surprising. But in any event, I would have thought that with the education we have now surrounding sort of savings and separating money and money management, because it's such a hot topic, that more people would be putting their money into a separate pot. And I think it's actually quite nice. I know the rates are low, but still, like you said, it's better than nothing. And to actually watch your money grow in a separate pot, it's quite a nice thing to see. It's quite, and forget about it, put it in there and just forget about it. Let it kind of do what it needs to do rather than dipping and then having that regret.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the most fundamental thing. First step, split it so you don't spend it. Second step, get the possible interest rate you can. Third step, have multiple pots for different savings goals. So your emergency fund, your
100%.
holiday fund, things like that.
Yeah,
And that really will make a huge difference to your savings balance. So it's
definitely.
interesting one. Next one is, this is an interesting one in terms of it feels good and it feels bad. And this is around the funding of debt advice in the UK.
Mhm.
There's going to be an increase in the amount of money that goes to
Which
debt
is amazing.
advice. Thumbs
Yeah.
up. But then how that money is going to be split has been proved quite controversial this week.
Yeah, because I think, people, especially with personal debts, they want to go and have that face to face contact. And it can be very complex. Going online or talking on the phone, sometimes it can be very frustrating. The person doesn't understand. Maybe you've got documentation you need to show to someone so they can get to the crux of the matter. You can't do that over the phone. So having that face to face is invaluable to people. So, as you said, yes, I understand they're trying to make it accessible. So, where the funding may perhaps, well, they're going to have to perhaps potentially close down some of the face to face offices, and they're trying to streamline it into face to face, online, and telephone. And it is accessible to more people. But there are some people, as we know, especially like older people, who will not be able to access online or telephone as they could face to face.
Yeah, so this is a report in The Guardian about the sort of the national funding for debt advice. It's generally kind of sort of commissioned and distributed by the Money and Pension Service. And it says that the overall amount of funding will go up from 51 million to 71 million. So a really huge increase, which I think is really good news. The idea, obviously, to try and reach more people as well. And actually, Joe, during the pandemic, a huge amount of debt advice has been online.
Right.
But I think what people are saying, and there are sort of some leaks about in this Guardian article, and with all the articles we'll talk about today, I will link to them in the show notes so you can read them as well. There is also the the kind of implication that the leaks sort of saying just how drastic the reduction in these debt advisors, the number of them would be, and those really complicated cases, they're hard work. I know people who do this, and it's very, very difficult to sort of maintain that relationship. Do this thing. It's not just pop in, we'll sort it out in 20 minutes. It's an
Of
ongoing
course.
back and forth for these cases. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on and see what happens. And like I say, pros and cons with this one, certainly. If they can reach more people and help more people, fantastic. But if it means some people are going to struggle even more and not get the solutions they need, then that's going to be sort of, potentially catastrophic for them. And we all know that the sort of how spiraling debt and mental health are so linked together that it can be real problems.
Of course. Of course. Yeah, they definitely. I get it, but at the same time, we have to be aware that there are vulnerable people out there. I mean, even simple things like, for instance, some people can't pick up the phone. They can't afford to pay the phone bill, so they need to go in and see somebody face to face. It's easy access. So taking that away from communities, it could be catastrophic. 100%.
Yeah. Now, another week and another energy story. This is always ongoing. This is and it's going to keep on going. But the story this week, I think, is a particularly bad one. This is a report from Money Saving Expert. What's happened here?
So the Department for Work and Pensions sent out letters to people who were eligible for winter fuel payments. That's what they're saying. So the more vulnerable category of people, saying, so it was 10 million letters. Let me just backtrack. 10 million letters that were sent out saying that they could save an extra £290 if they were to switch providers and to contact the Citizens Advice Bureau for more information. Now, we know about the energy price hikes at the moment, and if you were to switch, this could potentially cost you up to an extra 30% on those
Yeah.
bills, because all the cheaper deals on the market, they've been slashed, they've been taken off, so that there isn't anything out there. So what the money's Uncle Martin, I love calling him Uncle Martin, money saver expert. So what he's advising people to do, it's better to stay on your tariff and to move to the default standard variable tariff, which is price capped by the provider. So that's what he's saying, because it forces energy firms to sell energy at below its cost price. So there is no cheaper option out there. So you're better to stick than to switch at this current point in time.
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I mean, when Money Saving Expert investigated this, they couldn't actually get confirmation of how many of those 10 million letters had already been sent out. But I would have thought, even if they haven't all gone out, they are going to go out, because the
Yep.
DWP say that, well, do you know what? The practicality of doing it, the cost of doing that, and the waste of doing it, of sending out these new envelopes, because it was printed on the envelope. It wasn't on the letter inside. It was
That's
on the
right.
envelope at the
It's
back.
on the envelope. Yeah.
Yeah, they just, it doesn't make sense to do that. And I can understand that. You don't want to see 10 million envelopes just going into the recycling. Hopefully, fingers crossed, landfill will be awful. But, you don't want to see that. But you do think maybe they could have, like, right, these letters that are going out, just put something at the top of it, a really important thing to say. Ignore the message on the envelope, or
Yep.
put an extra letter in there to try and sort of combat that a little bit, because it could, for someone, if you're on winter fuel payments, you're likely to be more vulnerable. You're more likely to sort of consider, or have less money and see something that literally the back of the envelope, big print. Save. Do you want to save £290? Well, go and switch your energy provider. So it's quite a sort of a scary one there. And I think the message is to get out to anyone who, well, actually anyone, not just people who potentially might be getting winter fuel payments, anyone who you think might be thinking about switching and fixing their energy. I've seen letters that come through and emails come through to friends where they're kind of saying, hey, switch this fixed deal when your contract
Yeah.
ends and you'll pay this. And it's massive. It's astronomically high. And they hide the fact that the standard variable rate tariff is actually now, bizarrely, the cheapest option. So
Yeah.
just tell your friends. It might be a weird thing when you're out. By the way, did you know this is about energy? And they might look at you. But, if you're listening to the show, you're a savvy bunch anyway. You're like me. You're like Dawn. This is an important thing to get out there, because that bill hike is absolutely massive. So if you can avoid it for as long as possible, then I think that's really important.
I agree. 100%.
Now, obviously, energy prices have been going up, but there's a new term for things changing as a result of hiking prices, which I've not heard this before. This article was in relation to the States, but I think it probably applies here as well. This is skimpflation.
I'd never heard of that before. I was like, wow, they have a word for everything.
What is skimpflation?
So basically, it's a term that has been born post-pandemic. So if we think about things like flights being cancelled, services being temporary suspended, items not being delivered, you're not getting these things, but you're paying the same price for that service that has been cancelled or delayed or whatever. So we're skimping on, the service that we ought to get, the great service that we usually get. So this is what they're saying skimpflation is all about. So consumers are getting less for their money. And there's a loss of labor, isn't there? There's labor shortages. but the supply chain problems, as we know, is all around the world as well, isn't it? So yeah, there's a consequence on this because there's huge consumer dissatisfaction at the moment because everybody is complaining because of this, which
I
is
mean, it's
bad.
true, isn't it? You see this. I mean, I think when as soon as I heard this term and what it meant, you think, actually, yeah, you do see that all the time. So like a longer than normal wait time. Now, whether that's in
Yeah.
a call center, you're on the phone, it takes longer to get through, or maybe it's a delivery. I've definitely heard people saying that, well, Amazon is doing 2 days now rather than 1 day and whatever. And absolutely, you can understand why some of these happened at the height of the pandemic during lockdown, which is much, much harder to do things. But really, by now, some of these things you'd kind of think, well, this is just how you're running things now. And if you don't have the staff available for it, well, you're obviously not paying for them. But why are we still paying the same amount? If you haven't got enough people to man your call center, then surely that cost saving should be reflected elsewhere. But we are still paying the same, or we might have been paying more for these services. So yeah, it definitely something I can relate to. Have you kind of fallen foul to skimpflation? Can you think of anything?
I'm currently waiting on a Boots parcel that was supposed to be here last Friday. So there you go.
Well, it's lucky you didn't need it urgently, isn't it?
I know, right? So yeah, we're definitely seeing it. And I had this conversation the other week because people are believing that we're just blaming COVID still. So, we're not getting that service, so not getting something delivered. And people are automatically, but it's COVID. And you're thinking, okay, not that it's ended, obviously, but we've come out the hard part of COVID. Surely, things are getting back to quote unquote normal. Like you say, where are the staff? Where is this service? But why are you still charging? If there's an issue and a problem, why are you still charging us these premium prices?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people as well have been trying to advise people, for instance, with delivery. So a lot of, especially clothing companies, if you think about people shopping, you'll pay for next day delivery at a premium price, but you're not getting your item the next day. So people have been saying, just make sure you get into contact with that company to get that money back because you haven't had the service as they've promised. I know sometimes it is estimated, but the ones that guarantee that next day delivery, you can get that money back. So that's an important point as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really good shout there because that is an additional service, like you said, the guaranteed one. If they mess up, that's not your fault. That's their fault.
Right.
They shouldn't offer the service if they can't deliver it. The more broader stuff, like 3 to 5 days, well, okay, it's 3 to 5 days or whatever it is.
But 3 to 5, yeah.
Get in touch and get in touch with the retailer. It's not down to the courier; it's the retailer, and that's right. Actually good news as well because I don't know if you've ever tried to get in touch with any of the couriers.
No.
It's impossible, isn't it? Where is it? Don't know. You can't even have phone numbers for half these people.
You can't even get through. Yeah.
No. What's the really, really bad one? Hermes. Oh,
yeah.
Hermes. Tried to get through to them once.
Ever.
Absolute nightmare.
So yeah, it's an important point to recognise. 100%.
It is. But I mean, we also should recognise, and you mentioned it there, that actually, some of the reasons behind this skimpflation is a lack of workers. And somewhere else, this is again, because I'm not in London anymore, can't get Ubers where I am. Maybe the odd stray one that's come from Leeds, and if you were really lucky to look at your app at that point, you might be able to grab it. But generally, Ubers are out the window here. But apparently, there's a shortage, and it's getting harder to get a car, and it's more expensive to get a car. And this is an article in the New Statesman. What are they saying here?
So and it's interesting this article's out because about 2 weeks ago on Twitter, there was a barrage of people complaining, and mostly in London, where they couldn't actually get an Uber to pick them up from their location. When they finally did, the prices had spiked. So what you'd normally pay for a trip had just completely gone out the window. So in this article, what they're saying is that the rounds for Uber drivers are really not worth, actually going on the rounds and doing the job, basically. So drivers are quitting and the rate per mile is unsustainable.
Yeah.
So, for instance, we had one driver who was booked on a 24-mile job, but this turned into a 48-mile job because of the traffic, and he would have been paid £29 for that. So the same, they've got other jobs as well where they're paying £1 per mile less than sometimes as well. So the drivers are not getting paid enough to do these jobs. If they are then booked, they're spiking the prices because it has to be worth it for them to be out and driving. You've got the impact of vehicles going up. So we know that a lot of Uber drivers drive the Toyota Priuses, don't they?
Yeah.
So they had said that the cost of the vehicle has gone up 53%. So in March, for instance, you could have bought a Toyota Prius for 11,600. So that was in March. 6 months later, the same vehicle is costing £17,759. Wow. So putting this all together, the cost for that Uber drive, it's a lot. It's a lot. And then being booked for jobs that you're just thinking, well, that's not worth it at all to go on that. That's why we've got the shortage. And also Brexit, the fallout of that. Where we've got
absolutely. And there's all these things, perfect storm, isn't it? But you can understand, like, use that frustration, isn't it? When you order one, right, I'm on my way, and they go, no. And they basically, it's popped up, they've pressed accept, they've seen where you want to go, and they've gone, nah, that's not for me. And the reason that you think, why are they telling me, what's the problem? Actually, if it's going to, cost them more to do it than they're going to get paid for it, of course they're going to turn it off and wait either for surge pricing to come into play, where they'll get more money and they get paid very well for those, or they'll wait for a shorter journey, which means it's not going to be sort of the chance of them getting caught up in those, bad traffic or whatever it might be, or people stopping off for the cash machine or stopping off at McDonald's or whatever. That doesn't make a difference. It's not how long you're in the cab, it's how far. Sorry, I shouldn't say cab because cab drivers get angry in the Uber. And how long you're in there. That's what reflects on the price. So
that's right.
But there's also an interesting sort of side to this as well, is that all these low cost car services come into play, kind of decimated a lot of the kind of the mini cab services. There's a lot less of those available. But now we're in the position, well, you haven't got the mini cabs or as many of them as before in order to get home. But then the Uber drivers aren't around or picking up as many jobs. So now there's just less around, and those cheap fares are much, much harder to find. So really interesting one. I hadn't been aware this was a problem, but one for people to be aware of. And I think potentially, don't just rely on getting an Uber, make some plans. And there was a huge amount this year around people's safety when they're out and about. So I think there's a lot of sort of concern around that as well. If you can't get home, what do you do?
Yeah, 100. Yeah, and obviously it's Christmas season. It's coming up with parties and all sorts. So, like you say, plan in advance just so you can get home safely.
Yeah, Dawn, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if people want to find you and follow you online and all the content you create, what are the best places for them to go?
You can come over and find me on Instagram. I'm at Dawn_Heels, so HEELS. And on YouTube, I am Dawn Heels. Just put that in and you'll find my videos.
Brilliant. I will link to that as well as all the stories that we've just spoken about in the show notes, so people can click through from listening to this and find you and read more about what we've been talking about. But until next time, Dawn, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And just head to becleverwithyourcash.com/cashchats232 to get all those links. You'll also find that URL in the show notes. So while you're reading this right now, you can go to the description and just click through in your browser. Right, let's round up this episode, this Friday bonus episode, with my deals of the week. Do you want a heads up before we do that, though? I should say there are lots of flash sale offers happening right now, and I think that's going to continue throughout the month. And obviously, they're there for a day or two, and then they're gone. So what I would say, if you want to make sure you don't miss out on the best ones, those, if I spot any really, really good ones, I do share them over on my kind of extra Instagram profile that I've got. It's Clever Cash Deals, at Clever Cash Deals on Instagram. It's like a second account I've got, and that's where I do post those sort of short-lived ones. So for example, this week there was a £40 bonus if you took out a Santander credit card via Quidco, plus £30 on top the normal cashback. So open up a credit card, you don't even have to use it, and you'd get 70 quid, which was quite a decent return. And likewise, yesterday, there was a 20% off deal at Selfridges. So all those kind of things, if you want to make sure you spot those ones, then follow me there on Insta. But anyway, let's talk about the ones which are still going to be available to you on Friday when you listen to this. And the first one to tell you about involves Disney Plus, in fact. It is the birthday today of the streaming service. It's a couple of years old. Obviously, we didn't get it here in the UK straight away. It's 2 years in America, though. And to mark that, they are releasing a huge number of movies today. So you've got Jungle Cruise with The Rock. You've got Marvel's Shang-Chi and The Legend of the Ten Rings. There's a new Home Alone movie. There's loads of extra things on there. So it was a good time to watch it. And also, it's a very cheap time to watch it because until Sunday, you can get 1 month for $1.99. Normally it'd be $7.99. So this is if you're a new customer or if you're an ex-customer, someone who's previously cancelled. Obviously, if you've already paid for the month, then you're out of luck. You're not going to be able to get it, but that's worth checking out. And also, if you collect Tesco Club Card points, and if you've got £6 worth of points, again, until Sunday, you can swap £6 of points for 3 months of Disney Plus. Normally, you need £8 of points. So there's a little bit of a discount there as well. Bank switching offers, always tell you about these ones when they come along. So many of them. Almost every week there's been a new one. One I briefly mentioned last week, First Direct, £130 switch offer. This is boosted from the standard 100 to 130, but that will end on the 22nd of November. So if you haven't had a switching offer from First Direct or HSBC in the past, do check the terms and conditions when you click through. This is a good opportunity to get that boosted amount. I would imagine it will probably end in November, the switching offer will disappear, and then it will probably come back in the new year. That's generally how First Direct tend to do it. Now, if you shop at Tesco, in the big ones at least, the Tesco Extra stores, it's worth having a look at the different gift cards because you might see a special promotional £50 Tesco gift card on sale with a £5 bonus card attached to it, which you can spend in January. So if you regularly go to Tesco anyway, snap this up because you'll be able to use that. And although I think a lot of the tills will only let you buy one, you might get lucky and might be able to buy 2 or 3 of them. This is while stocks last though, so I wouldn't leave this one too long. And that's it for this week. I will do another roundup over on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and on the blog and everything on Saturday morning if any more new deals do pop along. So make sure you check all of that out. I'll be back on Tuesday with another full episode. So if you haven't already, hit subscribe, hit follow, whatever it is on your podcasting app so you don't miss out on any of those. But until then, my name is Andy Webb. You've been listening to Cash Chats. Take care. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please do leave me a review. Let me know what you think, and why not tell a friend as well. Remember, any information shared in this episode should not be seen as financial advice. If you need more information, you should do your own research. And finally, the music is Easter Island by Lonely Punk and provided on a Creative Commons license.